What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Double Coverage, the premier NFL podcast of the Gin Sports Network. I'm your host, John J. II, alongside our NFL expert, Robert Rocco. Robert, good to see you again, buddy. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good man. It's been a long time. Feels like we were just wrapping up the season yesterday, and here we are kicking off another season, man. It's been a fast year for me.
Yeah, me too. It's like a revolving door. I say it every year, and it seems to get more and more true. I prove myself right every time I say it. But as soon as football season's here, it's gone, and as soon as it's gone, it seems like it's back. It did seem like a while. I got to give it that. It did seem like a while since the last season ended up until now. It has. I could feel the time that has passed, so that's a good thing. But it's right back, and it really never left. I mean, if you think about off-season stuff, you think about the draft occurring, then you have the trade windows, then you have free agency. There's a lot of things that happen in the off-season that can get pushed to the background until the month of August rolls around. Then you get some preseason games. Then you get some coaches coming out of the woodwork, spilling the beans on some stuff that's been happening in the back office, behind closed doors, out of the view of the media for the most part. So we get a little bit of a sneak peek into that. We've seen that a little bit with Sean McVay and Aaron Donald in the LA Rams camp, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. I don't want to jump ahead of myself. But I guess, what do you have as an anticipation? So you're coming off as the commish of the Gin Pros Pro Capper Fantasy Football League and the winner of it. So how do you feel going into this year of not only football but fantasy? How has your perspective changed? How has it stayed the same? What are your outlooks going into this season look like?
Yeah, I mean, as football as a whole, I don't feel like there's like a huge change of the guards, right? I feel like you're gonna have your same, uh, you know, same teams almost that you had in the playoffs last year. There's always a couple new ones, right? But you're still gonna have some of your same juggernauts that have been cranking out wins for several years now. So I don't expect a lot of changes there. I don't think enough teams made like substantial, complete overhauls that we're going to have a lot of worst to first or something out of the ordinary. There's going to be a couple of those teams that make the playoffs that didn't last year, but um, and that affects fantasy as well, right? Because then you're looking at the same teams for the same offensive production, and are they going to achieve that or not? So you start diving into like, all right, are these teams really going to be the same? They got maybe a new quarterback or new OCs, or maybe they added a piece or two in free agency or the draft that may affect the fantasy production. So those are things you'll look at. And then you look at some of the old teams that have just had sneakily good offenses every year. Maybe they're not the best teams, but they've still maintained good offenses through the years and had some production out of their top players. So you don't always got to be looking for the best teams, for fantasy wise, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. The running back situation has just continued to evolve, right? I mean, you go back 10 years, right? And everyone had like one bell cow back. Like, yep, if I pick this player, they're going to be the starter throughout the season. They're going to get all the carries, all the touchdowns, etc. Now everyone's running dual backs or split backfields to some capacity, even if it is minor. Maybe somebody's getting red zone looks, right? And even if a few red zone looks are taken away from the lead back, now all of a sudden that's going to take those fantasy points away. So, um, holistically, I'd say running backs are always going to be the hardest, right? If you're in a PPR league, they're a little bit less important. Then you're looking more for those receiving backs, like Christian McCaffrey's, et cetera, that are going to get more receptions. Um, but then even those guys you're taking risks on, right? Because those are usually smaller backs that are more likely to get injured. So, yeah, fantasy is always fun. I always have a great time doing it. Obviously, didn't expect to win first year with the Gen people here, but just having to work out that way with luck of the draft. Obviously there's some luck involved. My players stayed pretty healthy. I will say I lost Neighbors early. Like that was an early draft pick, losing Malik Neighbors. That I thought my year was going to tank after that, honestly. But I was able to replace his production with some like waiver wire pickups and some of my draft backups that I had that were able to at least replace some of that production, even though it wasn't complete. That's all you're looking for. If you lose somebody that's getting you 20, 30 points a week, really difficult to replace that. But if you could get at least 10, 15 points a week out of somebody in their replacement, you're trying to look at that consistency over those big weeks, I would say.
Yeah, and when you can manage a team and look at a team and handle certain injuries and certain ups and downs that will definitely transpire throughout the course of a season, that's where you can really find out whether or not you're going to be able to be a contender come the end of the season or not. Because that's what it really comes down to is managing a team. You can perform well in the draft, and you should perform well in the draft. Uh, and we've seen certain individuals, we won't name names here, but that they didn't perform well in the draft and they wound up paying dearly for it in the end. And these individuals that we're referring to actually wound up
Yeah.
making a Cinderella run at the end. It just became too little too late, and then the bottom fell out. But it is what it is. That's just kind of the beauty of it. But I mean, speaking in particular to this individual that will remain nameless, it's really amazing what he was able to do with limited resources, with his back against the wall, and he gave it a hell of an effort. I got to give it credit. He did give it a hell of an effort. It was just a little bit too late, and that was with the garbage draft. So it can be done. You don't want to start with your back against the wall if you can help it. So that's something that you can kind of control depending on where you fall in the draft. Really doesn't matter where you fall in the draft in a 10 man. You can usually pick up the pieces and figure it out and try to manage what you have and create something maybe out of nothing. But yeah, being able to manage that team, I think that's what separates the luck factor compared to the skill factor of being successful in a fantasy football league, whether it's PPR or not. Most leagues nowadays are PPR leagues. But that having strong, recruits, strong drafts in the early going, managing your team well. Maybe you do a couple trades early before even week one hits. That can be done as well. But also having a league, which I think we've done a better job at year over year, and that is having a league that is managed well, managed properly, and that's something that can't be undermined. And people can say, "Oh, well, we're drowning in a sea of rules and regulations," but you need to have somewhat of a framework of this is how things are going to go, and this is how certain situations are going to be conducted. This is how they're going to be handled at the head office, handled upstairs, and you got to keep peace amongst the league. And we've dealt with problems every single year, and I think every league does to some extent, especially if there's money on the line. So, what have we decided to do differently going into 2026 to mitigate some of those issues that we faced last season?
Yeah, one thing we unfortunately learned was the sleeper app is pretty trash. Like it you would think like over the years they'd have updated some of the features on it, but it's kind of maintained some of those same bugs. We routinely every week somebody had extra people on their roster because of like the way the IR works in Sleeper League. So I think the easiest way to get rid of that is for one, let's use the ESPN app instead of Sleeper this year. I've used that ESPN fantasy app for years at our work leagues, never had any issues. So, and some of the reporting, it does like a league history, and some of the reporting is actually pretty cool too. So that'll be pretty sweet to see, like weekly updates wise. But
Hmm.
also from an IR perspective, what I've done in other leagues is there is no IR. Like you either, if somebody gets injured, you have to roll the dice on if they're going to come back, and you want to hold that roster spot to where they're going to come back and earn you some points, or you got to let them loose and kind of leave it free range at that point. So I like that a little more. I think it adds a little fun in the game. Like all right, if I have George Kittle like I did last year, and then he's out for several weeks. Now I have to play the game of is he even worth holding on to now if he's going to miss, if it's week 8 and he's going to miss 5 weeks or 6 weeks, is it even worth holding on to hope that he comes back for like the fantasy playoffs or not? So I like that kind of mini game in the game itself, right? Of having no IR. And
Yeah,
then,
I like that too.
and just having like, an average 6 or 7 man bench, right? Not getting too crazy with the bench. That way people can like hoard players. Whether we do a 10 man or a 12 man league, you can always get into a pickle with like having way too many bench positions. And then all of a sudden there is no waiver pickups to be made. So uh, some people like that. I'm of opinion like I shouldn't be playing a third string running back at any point. So it just depends on the personality and what kind of league you're in. But yeah, I think overall it was a pretty good season. Yeah, like you were saying, a lot of people had good years, and between the draft and coming back and making some acquisitions, some trades. I feel like we had some pretty fair trades going on. Like they were kind of risky, some risky trades that people took a chance on, and still maybe it panned out, maybe it didn't, but it wasn't like there's a bunch of unfair stuff going on. It was just mainly that IR situation, which we will address in this next season.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's still some things in the queue as well as far as what we're gonna do with waiver wire pickups and orders
Yep.
and stuff like that. I know that ESPN it just alleviates a lot of those issues that can come up, and it takes a lot of the legwork out of me, the owner, and you, the commissioner, because we don't want to have to deal with all this background bullshit. Because if it's happening already and it shouldn't be happening, we should count on the application, the service that we're using
Yep.
to be able to mitigate some of this stuff in the background without our involvement. And especially with the IR spots, the IR holds, uh, it was an issue that we had to deal with. But
Yeah,
I
that
think
was a
getting rid of the IR completely, I think, is the best idea I've heard yet. Because, like
yep.
you said, you can hold on to that player if you think they're going to come back. They can burn up a bench spot in your roster, and then you can hold on to that player, and you'll have that player when they become healthy again. But if not, you can cut them loose and say, hey, I'm going to pick up another guy that I think is going to be a rising star off the waiver wire, or maybe make a trade for that player. Maybe someone else sees the value in that player coming back, and you can utilize that to your advantage if you hold that player that's injured at the current time. Maybe he has a 3-week window, maybe he has a 6-week window, maybe it's undetermined. But if you can manage that value and someone else sees that value, they might be able to pick that player up in a trade,
Yep.
and they might be able to roll the dice a little bit on their health, and they could get them at an opportune position, whether it's going into the playoffs, going into the part of the season where you're building that rank and building that status of wherever you're at in the division that they're playing in. So you can see these things happen, and these things happen all the time. But to be able to not have that safety net of, okay, I'm just going to hold him on IR. If he comes
Yep.
back healthy, then I have to move him back. Which
Yep.
that's what Sleeper wasn't doing. They weren't automatically saying, okay, this player's now healthy, or they're questionable. Maybe they're not going to play,
Yeah.
but they've been cleared to play. So they've been removed from the injured reserve.
Yeah.
So now you got to make a decision, and
Yeah. It
taking
was
away that
getting
IR spot removes that decision making
Yeah, it was
completely.
getting right up to game time, and people had an extra person on their roster.
Oh yeah, they were
It's
questionable.
like
I mean, usually they
yeah.
weren't active, but they
Yeah.
were questionable at the very worst.
Yep. For sure.
So that's going to be a big help. I think moving on to, and I know we've thrown some shade, thrown some hate, and it really blows my mind. It made me think that we were doing something wrong when really that was a stock feature within the Sleeper
Yep.
application. That was a big issue for us. It brought up a lot of big problems for us, and it created a lot of animosity within the players and the managers in our league. So
Yep.
we want to completely get away from that, because we were getting the shit for it, because we were like, oh, well, you're managing the league, you got to be mitigating this stuff. When in reality, we had no hand in it, but we shouldn't have had to, because the application should have been able to take care of that stuff for us, and it wasn't doing that. So I think a move from Sleeper is the right decision.
Yep.
Hopefully they fix their thing, because I do like their platform,
Yep.
and I like their navigation through the application and whatnot. But ESPN's it's tried and true. It's time
Yep.
tested. It's gone through updates. It's gone through a lot of revamping over the years, and it's been a solid program for fantasy football for a long time. So I think it's gonna be a good move
Yep.
for everybody.
For sure.
Yes, sir. So we're gonna be bringing out some more. I think we do have a spot, and those spots could be increasing depending on the availability within the Pro Capper. Obviously, everybody that played in it last year that made it to the end of the season will have an opportunity to reclaim their spot. But if we don't have people that are rejoining, we'll be able to release that information to the public, and maybe you can get a spot in the Pro Capper. We'd love to have you guys be a part of it. And it's a great group of guys that are in that league. So I'm excited for this season. It's gonna be fun.
For sure.
And we'll talk more about fantasy stuff and kind of breaking things down strategy wise without spilling the beans too much. I mean, you still got to go out there and manage your team, no matter how much we tell you, no matter how much Robert, the reigning champ, tells you. You still got to go out and do it, and you still got to, he can give you the playbook, but you still got to run the plays and run them successfully to be able to be successful. So we'll leave that there. We'll be able to retouch on and give updates on the Pro Capper as we approach week 1 and beyond. So I'm excited for that. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions, though. So the Detroit Lions, We know that they've undergone some changes, as many teams have. Um, they resecured Jameer Gibbs, which was a big move. It was a big confirmation for Lions fans to maintain and keep that guy. Obviously, you had to throw the bag at him to keep him, just because of the movement that was going around. And you've seen this happen. We can see this across the sports world. We've seen it happen with Dylan Larkin in the NHL. We've seen it with Tariq Skubal here in the last couple weeks going to the Dodgers. But so you throw the bag at these guys. A lot of these guys are chasing the bag. And you got to give them credit, though, because their agents and them, I think a lot of times it's the agent's call to say, hey, you're either going to stay here and sit this out and try to build something here as a
Yep.
franchise player, or you got to take a trip out elsewhere. You gotta hit the road, Jack, type deal, and say we got to chase that bag
Yeah.
because we're not seeing any promise. We're not seeing any future for you here to build a dynasty at this club. So they don't want to see that happen to Jameer Gibbs. But I guess how does a player, when do they know? We talked about windows, how they're open and sometimes they close and they're closing, or how close are they to closing? We've talked about this in regards to multiple teams in the NFL. But how does a team maintain these star-studded players and keep them
Yeah.
when they're really not seeing any benefit? And how have the Lions navigated that? And how have they achieved a win with keeping Jameer Gibbs? And how can they build on that?
Yeah, with the NFL, it's kind of a unique league in the sense that for one, obviously there's a salary cap. But two, there's also things like void years, right, where they can add years onto the back end of the contract that may or may not be voided depending on different circumstances. But um, with a team like the Lions, you have so many star-studded players that were acquired in such a short window, and they're doing a good job of paying all of them. Honestly, like they've paid St. Brown, they've paid Sewell, they've paid Campbell, they paid Kirby Joseph, which I'll touch on in a second. Like they've paid all these guys, right? Obviously, Goff's been paid. Now it's just a matter of can you maintain this roster now with all these players on it long term with all their massive contracts? And as of right now, it's looking like the answer is yes. But what does that mean for players like Sam Laporta or Brian Branch? The guys coming back from injuries, are they going to be offered the same kind of treatment? That their teammates that have received those big contracts have gotten. Yet to be determined there, but so that's the big thing the Lions are trying to do. Obviously, they've drafted pretty well. Not so much lately. That's been the big critic of Brad or critique of Brad Holmes is that he came out swinging, right, like the best drafts the Lions have ever seen, like multiple Hall of Famers, right, rightfully so, I would say at this point. I mean, it's hard to imagine, if St. Brown and Penny Sewell and a couple of those guys continue to have the careers that they have, aren't going to be in the Hall. So um, they at least have gotten those caliber of players. Now it's like the last couple years, not as much, and they really haven't went out in the free agency and spent either. So when the draft isn't panning out and you're trying to sign all your players, it hurts 10 times worse. Whereas you're a team like, say, the Patriots, right, that go out and just spend a couple $100 million in free agency with a completely different strategy than the Lions. It hurts your team more if your whole strategy is built on draft, sign long term, and then you have a couple bad drafts in a row. Pretty tough to overcome. Now it's like with the second part of that is they re-signed Kirby Joseph, and immediately after he gets this catastrophic knee injury that may be career-ending at this point. Um, they think it's cartilage damage in his knee, to where he uh, basically has arthritis in his knee to this point. And it's more about how much pain can he manage to still play at a high level than is he physically able to. So that's going to suck on his front, right? I mean, is he going to just be screaming in agonizing pain every time he makes a hard cut? I don't know. Obviously, that's up to him, as far as how far he's going to go from here in the league, whether he's going to continue to play or not. Um, and then beyond that, you have Brian Branch, who's coming back from injury. Sam Laporta is coming back from injury. Neither one of those technically those guys have contracts yet long term, but are they going to re-sign them? Obviously, they just re-signed Gibbs, which when you look at Gibbs, are you better with him? 100%. But he's also a running back, so health of that position has been the biggest concern. If he maintains his health, no issues with that contract. Now, if he goes out next year, has a catastrophic injury, and all of a sudden doesn't have the same burst anymore, or whatnot, because obviously running backs are affected the most with lower extremity injuries, right? If you're just sprinting every single play, receivers too, but you're getting the ball every other play almost when you're a running back. So if you have something like that happen and you have this huge contract and all this money tied up in them, it puts you in a tough spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where you can run into some issues, especially if you don't have a lot of depth at that position, especially the running back position, because you're taking a lot of hits, especially those short runs, those counter plays, the draws. Those plays are just brutal to a young running back, and you only have your youth for so long. I mean, you mentioned a quarterback in Josh Allen. We notice him face a little bit of injury. We've seen him lose his burst a little bit. At least I did. So
Yep.
you lose that pep in your step. It's really hard to get it back, and you're always racing against father time. We know that these guys' time is limited with taking all the damage that they are. So you got to maintain your health. And like you said, they could be the healthiest, youngest guy in the world, but if you can't maintain your health, you take one bad hit. I mean, it could put you out for an indefinite amount of time, and that could be detrimental for not only your team but for your team's salary cap because now they have all this money tied up in this athlete. Now they really can't even afford, depending on how big of a bag they throw at a player, they really can't go out and shop around for another guy. You know, you're almost going back to the depth chart a little bit, back to your preseason depth chart.
Yeah,
If you have to, you hope you don't have to, but a lot of these guys are looking for opportunities. You don't have to throw a big bag at them to give them an opportunity. So
yep.
hopefully you stay close and keep these relationships with these players because they could be saving your ass here in week 8, week 9. So
Yeah, and that's not even delving into the fact that obviously Terry and Arnold's situation, right? He's supposed to be their starting corner, gets
yeah,
involved with some legal disputes outside, right? To where, not to get too much into it, but basically he has friends that are accomplices in a kidnapping case, right? To where he had some items stolen. Um, his friends went out, retrieve those items by basically holding people at gunpoint. So he's facing multiple felony charges. So the Lions, being that they have like a high character type organization going on, right? That's what they're going for is high character guy. They don't want the distractions. They just cut him. Like they don't even know what's technically going to happen. My assumption is he lied probably to the front end office, front end GM and everybody, and said, "This is nothing. Don't worry about it." And then it comes out that he's facing felony charges now. So um, that's my guess of what happened there. So the Seahawks are actually looking to sign him, but that's you walking into the season, you got free safety gone, strong safety gone, starting corner gone. Um, on the D line, you got Lee McNeil coming back from injury. You have a rookie that's probably going to be starting opposite Aiden Hutchinson at defensive end. So a lot of new pieces are going to be there on the defense, and then the offense. They go out and actually sign a veteran center, Cade Mays, and he's pretty average when you look at his stats and everything. Like he's middle of the road, but it was still better than the garbage they were throwing out there last year. And he comes in injury right off the rip, and now he's going to be out half the season. So they're in a tough spot. I know they have an easy schedule, but it's not getting any easier with all these injuries and off the field stuff piling up for the team and all this whatnot. So I'm hopeful, especially with the schedule, if they maintain their health. I think they will easily get 11, 12 wins. But if they can't maintain that health, they don't have a lot of depth at certain positions to get double digit wins again. So that's my concern as a Lions fan for sure.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned the defense. You mentioned the ailments that are facing the defense. Usually,
Yep.
at this point in the season, going back, rewind the tape 2 years, you didn't really have to deal with a lot of these defensive issues until later in the season, which was a pro for the Lions. They were still scrambling at a non-opportune time. But we talked about earlier, we talked about the pro capper. You don't want to start off with your back against the wall.
Yeah.
But it seems like the Lions, when they have their back against the wall, even if it's early, they're able to regroup and find a way. But if you don't have the assets, at least guys that you can trust in certain situations to perform and to save your team, which you need to have corners, you got to have strong safeties, you got to have a solid DN that can match the animosity that Hutchinson has, at least the intensity. Maybe not the animosity per se, but the aggressiveness
Yeah.
and the will to burst beyond the front lines and to create a threat in the backfield. You got to have those guys, and also you got to have your core guys on offense too. So if you're getting
Yep.
a veteran guy in Cade Mays that's injured as a center, you think he's going to be your guy, and you got to have your guy be your guy that's in tune with the offense. He's got to be more in tune with the offense than the quarterback does in a lot of ways.
Yep.
So having those guys not present is going to be an issue. Hopefully they can find them. It's just you don't want to be a Lions fan saying, "Oh, hopefully they figure it out."
Yeah.
We're going into
Yeah.
week one. We're less than a month away from week one. We hope they figure it
Yeah,
out.
this is a conversation if you're gonna have it, you wanna have it like halfway or 3/4 of the way through the year, not week 1. So,
Yeah, exactly. So I guess they have their backs against the wall. That goes
yep.
without saying. How are they going to manage going into week one? Do you see any promise? I'm sure you watched some of the preseason stuff. You probably watched the Bengals game.
Yeah.
Is there any pros of the depth chart, maybe further down the
Yep.
depth chart that you see with the Detroit Lions right now?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one that stands out is, Ahmed Hassanin, defensive end out of Boise State who was injured all last year, comes in and gets 2 sacks in his first, preseason action since then. So, he seems like he's gonna be at least a rotational player, maybe even vie for some starting snaps eventually. So, that was pretty cool to see. Um, as far as their receiving core, unfortunately, you've seen some people work the other way where they're potentially going to be out of the lineup or even the team. Um, Now, obviously, the Lions have spent a lot of draft capital in getting Isaac Tesla, but he looked terrible. I mean, I think they targeted him 3 times. I don't know if he had a catch, but he did have a drop that resulted directly in an interception. Hit him right in the face mask, right through his hands, into his face mask, picked off, you know? And when you're supposed to be wide receiver 3 behind J-Mo and St. Brown, I mean, you can't be having those types of situations come up
Hell
even,
no. And he had a lot of
you
touches
know.
last year and a lot of opportune moments
Yeah,
saved him a lot of games.
yeah,
Playing under the lights type shit. So
yeah,
if you're not doing that in the preseason, then you got to shake the rust off quick. You got to get the sandpaper out and start polishing
yep.
up because it's too late to be making those issues or making those mistakes, and we know that he's capable of better. So
Yeah,
come on,
they
man.
let a guy like Khalif Raymond walk, right? He immediately gets signed with the Bears. And Khalif Raymond was that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 slash kick and punt returner. So he brought a lot of value to the Lions. And he had multiple years of 600 yards receiving for the Lions too in that position. So to cut somebody like that, put all your faith in Tesla and have it not panning out yet is definitely frustrating. So and Tesla doesn't really bring as much value to special teams. So you're looking for somebody else like Lovett or somebody behind him to step up and fill that special teams void. So Kennedy, whoever it may be. Um, so yeah, it's been a little frustrating. Obviously, you got Jamison Williams and Say Brown, and you're pretty comfortable with that. You're pretty comfortable with Sam Laporta. You may not even really need a wide receiver 3. Let's be real. I mean, not every team is throwing 80 passes to a third wide receiver when you have a good starting running back, tight end, and 2 receivers. So a need is a crazy word though because you go and look at every year somebody's going to get injured, right? I mean, St. Brown has been pretty healthy, thankfully. James Williams, same thing. Doesn't mean that this year is going to be the case, and that wide receiver 3 or 4 is now your wide receiver 2. They're not on the same level. They're not even close yet to Jameson Williams and St. Brown, so they need to catch up quickly to give us that level of comfort in the offense in case something does go awry.
Yeah, so you got to have those strong guys that you're wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. You got to have them stay healthy. Fingers crossed that they do stay healthy, and they've been able to. Other than Laporta, of course, but
Sure.
and he seems like he's healed up and ready to go. But you can. This would be the objectives for the Lions. Keep your receivers healthy if you can. There's not really a whole lot you can do to prepare for that other than try to play smart football, know how to take a hit, know how to go down. Have a center you can trust, right? That's got to be at the top of their priority list. Hopefully they can do that. Rebuild the line, polish up the line, make sure they're on the same page, and then have a solid defensive core. I think that's going to be the hardest thing for them to do. Seems like they have the offense figured out. I think I have faith in them of finding a good center that can get the job done and service that offensive line and service that offensive core
Yeah.
as a whole. But to build that defense, that's not something you can do overnight. So that's going to be their biggest task at hand, I think. And it just seems like they've been dealing with the defense
Yeah.
and problems with
Yeah.
defense for the last couple of years, and that's what's
Yeah.
been holding them back.
Yeah, sometimes it's been injury, sometimes it's been draft, and now it's just a combination of everything, right? I mean, they don't have. It's hard to look back and say, all right, we shouldn't have re-signed Kirby Joseph, but no one knew he had this catastrophic injury coming down the pipe, right? So with Kirby Joseph getting an interception, the Lions are 18-0, I think, for his 18 interceptions. So anytime he's got a pick, they've won. So that's the impact he has for the Lions. And then you go look at a guy like Brian Branch. I mean, he's everywhere. He's getting sacks, he's getting picks, forced fumbles, tackles. I mean, he's easily one of the best strong safeties in the league. And arguably, when healthy, they are the best safety duo in the league. So having both of those guys out is really tough. And to your point, yeah, they're dealing with something every year, man. And as a fan, it's like, man, can we finally get a complete team? Can we get offense and defense both click in every week where we're blowing people out, right? Because we don't want to get in a shootout every week, because you're just rolling the dice and you're gambling at that point. Can Goff throw 5 touchdowns every single week? Probably not, right? So, uh, you know, you just hope that they can figure it out on defense at this point.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for too. I'm pulling
Yep.
for them, and you shouldn't have to be grasping at straws at this point in the year. But if they can figure it out, and that's like you said, you mentioned Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, that duo was able to gloss over a lot of the other issues that
Yep.
were present in that defense,
For sure.
and they could overlook that real easily just because of how powerful they were and how much weight they pulled. They really put the team on their back, especially the defense. They put the defense on their back and the entire team in a lot of situations that avoided a lot of shootouts. So I don't know. I don't know if you can't. Those guys don't grow on trees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you gotta take those guys when you can and sign them when you have the opportunity to. If you gotta throw the bag at them, if you have the cap space to do it, throw the bag at them, do it. You just hope that they pan out the way that you paid them. So
Yep.
that's kind of what
For
I'm
sure.
hoping for. Without getting too much into the weeds, I guess just staying on the subject of preseason. A lot of people say that, oh, it's just preseason football. We just kind of overlook that as no determination or it's no reflection of what the team is going to be as a whole come the regular season. I would say au contraire. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot to be taken away, and we kind of mentioned that with just the Lions specifically of being able to have to possibly count on that depth.
Yeah.
Even if the guys don't make the starting squad come week one, being able to call upon those guys and say, hey, we had some things happen. We're willing to give you a shot, and we need you now.
Yeah.
So, what can be taken away from preseason play,
Yeah.
and why should it not be overlooked?
Yeah, a few things. I'd say number one, like, yeah, you're looking for those emerging players, players that maybe they were just viewed as a depth piece or late round draft pick, or yeah, you're just trying to see what they're going to get out of even any draft pick or new acquisition. But those unheralded players, especially trying to get a shot, this might be their only chance to do so. So that's number one. Number two is obviously getting through healthy, right? You want to see mainly your starting players go through unscathed, right? So that's why a lot of teams don't play their starters that much during the preseason. Um, but a big thing is you'll find out pretty quickly where your starters are at, even in just a couple series. So, like, look at the Bengals, right? So they have Joe Burrow, great quarterback, consistently had a great offense to the point where if they even had an average defense, they'd have won multiple Super Bowls by now. But the other kicker on their offense that's been killing them every year is their offensive line. So when you're looking at a preseason game and you know that that's been a year over year issue for them, and you start focusing on it, and they put their starters out there, and the Lions backups get multiple sacks against them, you're like, uh oh, here we go again, So that's a big thing you could take away from preseason is, do those same problems exist for my team this year? And you'll be able to tell quickly, just even without a lot of football knowledge, you can just quickly watch one of those games like, yes, okay, they've addressed this. Or uh, I wouldn't read too much into I guess, offensive production, right? Because usually the defenses have an upper hand early. If you're installing a new system, right, the players might not have all the calls down yet. Even this far in, right? You have a bunch of rookies too you're dealing with. So um, I wouldn't read too much into the offensive production, but you do want to look for some key players that are emerging that can help your team in a pinch.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys you can call upon, like you mentioned, that can be an asset down the road. Maybe if not right now, they can be an asset come the regular season or week three, week four. You never really know what's going to happen in those early weeks. Especially you got a lot of new guys, a lot of rookies that are playing number one spots on the depth chart. We're seeing a lot of that shake up. We're seeing a lot of the NFL be thrown into a blender, and we're seeing that happen. That's why really you talk about anybody can win. It's really the case this year,
Yep.
just because of all that shake up that has occurred in the offseason and up and comers, trades, free agency, all that stuff combined.
Yep.
It's going to be
For sure.
interesting to see. So looking at some other stuff, I know this crossed my desk earlier today. The Aaron Donald situation. What do you know about the Aaron Donald situation? Sean McVay took it upon himself to go to a couple interviews and talk about Aaron Donald. Is he coming back, or what the hell's going on there?
Yeah, so obviously the rumor ever since he retired is let's get him back, let's get him back. Last year even with the playoff run, they're like, all right, let's get him in here just for the playoffs, and that's happened since he's retired, right? So it's not shocking to see that from such a high caliber player that retired really at the peak of his game. He was still producing at a very high level, and he just made the decision for himself to retire while he's still got his mental faculties in state, right? And still, he doesn't want the CTE and all this stuff long term. He still wants to be able to get up and not have his ankles fall off in the morning like Calvin Johnson does. So all of that stuff, it makes sense, right? That he retired. I mean, he imagine being a D
Yeah.
tackle, right? You got to go up against 300 plus O linemen every play for a decade. It's hard to even fathom that people can play that long as it is. And now you're asking him to come back more in his 30s and still produce. So that was shocking, but I'd say where he's at now. So obviously they brought him into the facility. There was pictures of him that got leaked early that he was there working out with the team. There were reporters, paparazzi getting him going to work out when they hadn't said anything yet. And now obviously they've addressed it and said, "Hey, we brought him in just to see if he still has that love for the game. Does he still have the passion for it? Because that's part of it too. Do you still want to get up and do this every day for another season?" Um,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where it's at now. So it's obviously balls in his court like it always was. And if he comes back and plays next to Miles Garrett, I mean, they got to be a lock for the Super Bowl, you would think.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can't see many runs getting outside of those two. And I think that was a big move for Miles Garrett to move to, because I know he was pretty solidified where he was at, and I think he's looking for bigger and better things, rightfully so. But yeah, if you look at that duo there on the edge, that's a damn good duo, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on any quarterback and any offensive line that they have to come across.
Yeah.
So definitely a threat in the NFC, but across the board, it's a threat.
Yeah. And they can move either player anywhere. Both of them can play D tackle, both of them can play DN. So good luck trying to figure that scheme out to try to deal with both of those players.
Yeah, I mean, I got to assume that there were conversations held behind closed doors. Say, hey, and I gotta assume even more. I can't imagine it being spearheaded by the Rams organization. That had to have been Aaron Donald taking it upon himself, staying up at night late and being like, you know what, I should still be out there playing. Probably killed him to be on the sidelines last season, especially seeing how he's into a commentator role. He's kind of doing the retirement thing and kind of going his own way, and that would have been fine. But I feel like these athletes, if they have any ounce of capability to still play the game, they still have the physical ability, they still have the mental faculties. They have that drive of, okay, I still have this ability right now. I'm definitely not going to have this forever. My window's guaranteed
Yeah.
to be closing here in the next couple of years. If I want it, I got to go after it right now, because in a couple of years I can't come back and change my mind. So it's almost that aspect of, I have to do this now. I maybe made a mistake getting out of here early, but at the same time, you got out at the pinnacle of your
Yeah.
game, winning the highest accomplishment in your sport. So if there's any time to leave the game, it would have been that time. So that's the other thing you risk by coming back. And we've seen it happen with multiple players, right? We've seen it happen with Marshawn Lynch. We've seen it happen with Brett Favre. We've seen it happen, I think, even with Aaron Rodgers in a way. He never really left, but
Yeah.
he did what he had to do. And even Tom Brady playing for those extra years that he did and not winning anything, not really performing or producing, he
Yep.
almost probably wished he would have left after he
Yeah.
won that one with the Bucks. So
Yep.
it's just one of those things. In hindsight, it's tough to play that game, but once you win the highest accomplishment, you get out there, you collect your bag, you collect your TV deals, your
Yep.
commercial deals, whatever you do. You kind of take the Shaq route of getting out of there, collecting the bag, and really multiplying your bag in a
Yeah.
lot more ways than you could have ever imagined as an athlete. But I think he just thinks he's too young. He's still too young to, I think,
Yeah.
entertain that.
I think
So
it's the Myles Garrett factor, right? I think he wants to
that could be
go and
it.
I think he wants to play get next to somebody that's actually on his same level, right? I mean, obviously Myles Garrett and himself are first ballot Hall of Famers, so which is crazy to say. I mean, everyone forgets about the Myles Garrett helmet swing that almost ended his career, where
Oh
he,
yeah, we just talked about
almost
Mason Rudolph and
yeah,
how much of a menace he is.
yeah. I mean, he didn't really, when you look back at Myles Garrett in that situation, he didn't really get as much punishment as people thought he would, and now here he is, all these years later, having a great career, and you really haven't. I'd get the credit you'll give him. Haven't heard anything out of his camp since, right? No off the field issues, no on the field issues. He's just played the game. So you would like to think that that was like the one out of character mistake he made, but that was a huge one.
Oh my God, I mean, he could have ended
Could
Mason
have killed him.
Rudolph's life. Yeah,
Could have
on
literally
that
killed him.
field. If you
Yeah.
connect clean with that, I mean, you're talking about a heavy ass helmet
Yeah.
connected with a bare head.
Hey, the memes were good though. The memes
Oh,
were
the
great.
memes were
So
good. I mean, from what I heard, I mean, I see a couple TikToks about Mason Rudolph. Supposedly, he deserved every bit of that punishment that he got, but I don't think you could say anything that's going to deserve that or what that could have led to. I mean, you can get under this guy's skin
yeah.
that bad. I mean, damn,
Yeah,
that's kind of
there was
crazy.
a lot of mixed stories about that whole situation looking back too. A lot of people said that he said something racist. A lot of
Yep,
people were
that's
like,
what I heard.
yeah, a lot of people were like, no, I was standing right next to him. I didn't hear anything. So who's
Yeah,
telling the truth? We'll never know. We'll never be in that locker room, unfortunately, to be able to know. But
yep.
obviously, to get under his skin that bad, he had to have said something pretty fucking off the cuff.
I mean, it's- I mean, he became
So,
the menace of society at that point, and that's what I
yeah,
mean. Wow, and that's just crazy. And he's still with the Steelers too.
yeah, yeah. And
I
here we
guess,
are.
and it was always, and there's still going to always be that rivalry between the Steelers and the Browns too.
Yeah, how much of that played a
So,
part of that too, right? If it
oh, and
was just
that,
two
yeah.
random teams, probably not even a thing happening.
No, no, no. But it's
Yeah,
just it's crazy to see and really dive into the different rivalries within the NFL because they're really bred from what has happened in years past of days and seasons of old to see those rivalries develop and to see them add fuel to the fire on subsequent games and matchups that have happened in recent history and that are to come. It just adds to the hype of those two teams playing each other, whichever two
yeah,
teams they are. So
yeah, for
it's
sure.
exciting stuff, man. It's part of the game. So I love to see it. I love to see the grit. I love to see the intensity, and that's what football needs. And I think that's hopefully where the NFL is continuing to go. Is regardless of all these rules changes, which I still have battles with dealing with them
Yeah,
and accepting them. If you can kind of get past that stuff, then I just hope the game retains its essence as much as possible going into
yeah,
the future.
yeah. A little less stomping on players swinging helmets, but we do want that intensity every play.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
want to
There's a
see it
fine
turn
line.
into a flag league here.
Right. There's a fine line that can be walked. Yeah, no, that's. I feel like sometimes, depending on where the league's going with the
Yeah.
rules changes and the interventions, I'm like, oh my god, maybe we're heading that direction. We're gonna be
Well, you
seeing
see it.
flags on one of these days.
Yeah, you see it in soccer and the NBA and WNBA every day. So you're kind of like, is that heading to the NFL? Where people are just feigning injuries left and right, or, everything's now an injection. I hope that doesn't come to football.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All right, Robert, that brings us to the end of the podcast tonight. Happy to be back with
Yeah,
you and with everybody
sure.
for another season here. You got any wise words going into the rest of the week, into the new week, and into week one, which will be upon us here very shortly?
All I got's go Lions, man.
Go
Every year.
Lions. That's all
Every
he's
year.
got. That's all he's got, folks. Good deal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, make sure to check us out on the web, ginsportsnetwork.com. Find us on social media at ginsportsnetwork, and we'll be in touch with you throughout the preseason and into the regular season, talking about the Pro Capper, talking about the NFL, talking about the ins and outs of the league, and find all of our links on our link tree in the bottom of the podcast for all of our socials and all of our outlets. We'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Double Coverage, the premier NFL podcast of the Gin Sports Network. I'm your host, John J. II, alongside Robert Rocco. Have a good night.